Hello, welcome filmmakers to our panel on in-camera effects, which is going to probably be a lot of also talking about using green screen and LED walls because let's face it, that's all we're doing these days. Do we even go to real locations anymore? I have awesome panelists here. All are heavy into the world. They'll explain what they do and why you should know who they are as we get along here. And let us just start right away with because Kyle, I know that you work with students. You do this stuff probably every day. What is your favorite thing about the technology that you get to use now?
My favorite thing currently is because it changes a little bit every day, right? But my biggest the greatest thing about this is that we can let our students be as creative as they want to be on a regular basis. You're not confined to a soundstage, or we're in Central Florida. You're not confined to shooting in the swamps. We've had students that have shot on different planets, in airplane hangars, all over the world, and it's really now just limited to their imagination as opposed to all the physical restrictions they used to have to shooting in sound stages.
And Jess, you're working with a big, beautiful XR stage. What is your favorite part about it?
I think immersing yourself into different worlds just by standing in a stage. We have been lucky to film on many of the largest volumes in the world. And you can stand in the center and just load a level and be anywhere you want in the world. And it's just an incredible experience. So I'm excited about the technology. I'm excited for the growth of technology and for producers and students, Kyle, to learn how to use these virtual production tools and environments.
And Chris, how are you using the tools currently? Because I know that you're doing a little bit of everything.
Yeah. So I primarily work in visual effects, and I also work in virtual production. A lot of times we'll just have a background. Sometimes we'll opt not to do blue screen, and we'll shoot on an LED. So which has its pros and its cons. But I particularly enjoy it because it allows the performance from the talent to be more authentic because you kind of can see what you're up against, opposed to kind of like having to imagine more.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what I
on
love.
the side, I'm also excited about this because I come from the stage. I come from theater, and I've seen how people have used it in theater for productions. So I think it's pretty cool too. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Kyle, since you're our professor, our in-house professor today, explain to filmmakers if you had to tell filmmakers what exactly is in-camera effects. How would you say that?
The way that I tend to explain it when people come through and do tours and stuff is that in-camera VFX is really just a window into a digital world. So whether you're doing green screen or you're doing LED volume, whatever it is, it's giving you the opportunity to shoot in camera and see into this digital world that you've created in real time while you're doing it without the need to shoot and then bring it into post and kind of wait and hope and make adjustments there. You're taking all that to the front end. You're getting all of your environments and all of your assets ready to go ahead of time, and then you're able to see your composites or you're able to see your backgrounds on the LED wall while you're shooting to help with, like they said, the actor immersion and kind of really understanding and being able to have a conversation with your effects artist about what it is that you're trying to convey in real time. And it makes it a lot easier to really get a clean, polished look, especially if you're using an LED wall and you're shooting for final pixel.
So I know that a lot of love for LED walls comes from just even things like you have natural reflections and natural lighting. And with green screen, you kind of have to figure it out, which is why in camera effects helps because you can kind of at least see it and imagine it. But with LED walls, and at this point, everybody, whoever feels like the most, you have an answer, just jump in. Uh, it's not as indie filmmaker friendly yet because it's 20 grand a day for the most part for an LED wall, whereas a green screen I could do it in my garage. But that said, how would you encourage indie filmmakers, or would you even encourage any filmmakers to push to do LED walls, or and if you did, how would you get them excited for it and to be like, yeah, you can raise the money, or here's why it might be okay for your budget, even though you think it might not be, because I know we save money here and there. Does anyone want to jump in on that?
I would say, and a lot of times you can LED and working in virtual production is not for everyone, right? And it's the key is lighting, right? And you think, oh, you've got all these walls. No, you have to still light your scene. So a lot of your budget from your posts can be moved forward, as Kyle said, and you can work it into your budget that way. However, it is cost prohibitive sometimes for producers to kind of figure out how to take those budgets and front load them. However, I see a lot of schools building these volume walls, and maybe there's partnerships that can be arranged with schools to help students learn how to use the LED volumes. But I think as adaptation, people adopt this technology, the pricing will come down. And someone just gave a quote the other day, there's over 300 stages in the world now, and I don't know who's keeping track of it, but
wow.
There's more and more and more stages coming online. And I think with that is as Kyle's teaching his students, we want to make sure that people are learning the right way how to use this technology. And again, it's not for everything. It's not for every scene. You don't want your films looking like a video game, so we want to make sure that we're educating everyone how to use LED and how to light it, and how to move forward, into the world of filmmaking with, these crisp scenes. And that's something we're working on is, I'm Jess Loren I came from visual effects, but I have a company now called Global Objects. We just raised a lot of money, and we're going to create the highest fidelity library of assets that you can kind of press a button or load onto your Perforce and have an environment ready to go. Because when I walked into these volumes, I was like, well, where's the library where I can press the button to be
right?
Where's Egypt? I want to be in Egypt right now, and it doesn't exist. So I was like, okay, as an entrepreneur, well, let's make it happen. So
that's so smart to be on the forefront of that. So there's a question for you then that keeps coming up when we talk about AI, which is, so you end up having this library of clickable locations, right? What are the rights for that? Like, it's just, how does the filmmaker know that they're okay to use whatever's in your library?
Yeah, so specific to our library, we're working with property owners and kind of having them understand that their physical property has a digital right, and partnering with them so that we can have those rights given to us, so then we can pass that along to our users, or for the end user, so they have it for their projects. But we're embarking on a new frontier, right? Like,
yeah.
We're seeing to in conversations with the MLB, we learned that the parks, like Wrigley Field, for instance, is owned by the Ricketts family. However, the MLB has the rights to any time a camera is pointed at that property. So if we're scanning, who owns, the rights for these new digital worlds? So I think, Global Objects, we have lawyers, we're working on it, and we're figuring it out. One of our first scans was a diner here in Southern California called Bob's Big Boy. And, if you're familiar, you got Bob. So we scanned it, and we're talking to them like, well, if you're a franchise, who has the rights to the building itself? Who has the rights, if it's the franchise, who owns, because there's Bob, or, so we're definitely figuring that out. But, things like parks, or, many locations that are government owned, we're figuring that out and putting them into our library at the highest quality level. So
you really are on the forefront of stuff, because this conversation keeps coming up on like, how do you own rights? And you're doing something even different. You're not even talking about building something in a computer. You're actually taking a physical location. So it'd be interesting to see where this all lands. But how lovely to be able to just be like, boop, I'm somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, and the technology also does not exist yet. You mentioned AI, of like taking photogrammetry or LiDAR scans, or whatever the data is that we have, and stitching it together to create this 3D world. I call it if you ever watch Bewitched, I watched it when I was a kid, Tabitha, she like twinkles her nose and makes it happen. Well, that doesn't exist yet, so one of the assets that we had took, 171 man hours of time to make this asset,
yeah,
pristine. So it's time intensive, it's money, and money is a big portion of what we're doing here. So until the Tabitha nose effect exists, it's going to be very labor intensive to create these environments.
It's so funny how nerdy we all are. I can kind of see it in Kyle's face too. Like, there's this nerdy like excitement over what you're doing. Like, I'm just like tingly, like, oh, this is so fun. So Chris, what are you feeling like? Because you're doing a lot of different stuff too. What are you feeling like where's the technology going, and how can indie filmmakers take advantage of it now? Because obviously we don't have the budgets as indie filmmakers that studios have.
It's interesting. Last year I was actually, because even though I work in feature film, like on big budget projects, I do a lot of indie stuff on the side. And last year I was dropping off like some walkies, like after a little small production, and the guy I was dropping them off to, he was like, "Oh, I have a volume. I have like, I have this set up to rent it out." And I was like, "Really?" And I was like, how much is like, how much did you spend on this? So he's like, "Yeah, I'm renting it out. I'm trying to rent out to small productions." I haven't circled back with him, but I have his information. I was just like, I wonder how much this costs for. I couldn't imagine spending that much on our small production. Like we're figuring this out for big productions for like Warner Brothers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I am very curious to see how that works. I do know, like, I've seen, I guess both Jess and Kyle's point, like, you have to be able to shoot this correctly if you're going to do it, because your costs will go up exponentially if you do it wrong, right? Because I've seen people shoot and then realize what they shot they don't necessarily want, or they want to make changes for it, and it's a lot easier to make changes on a blue screen than an LED wall. So you have a lot of like pros to shooting on an LED raw, like in production. You just have to. You can't make shortcuts in the beginning of production. You have to do it correctly and make sure, I'm not a VFX supervisor, but I've talked to VFX supervisors, and we've talked about how you have to, make sure you're far enough away from the wall, and like make sure you shoot it, in the right way, in the right lighting. Because I've seen some pretty like questionable imagery come from it. But on the other end, like I've seen some bike shots, some motorcycle shots, or we shot some stuff in some water scenes, or we've done fire scenes, like explosions in water, where we had the reflection coming off of water. And that was coming from the LED wall images, and that was amazing. It looked fantastic, and I
want to see the behind the scenes of this stuff. This is so cool.
Yeah, I mean, these kind of things you can, like, it's so much easier to have natural reflections off the water when you have it, on a wall, than having to, hire people to do that in post production. So there's definitely pros to it. I have not used that technology in a indie film environment though. But I do see how it can save you money if you know how to use it, like, later on. So I guess it's about having access to these stages. I've been to a couple in LA. I went to an event in I think it was like Thousand Oaks, a couple months ago, that was amazing. I'm just curious to see how much it costs to get an indie film on there, indie film set on there. So.
Yeah.
But I would say, like, the cost structure, like, we did a commercial once and we did 7 locations in a day, right? So like, if that location can work for a volume, then you could save a shitload of money, right? Like, so if you're
and your poor production coordinator doesn't spend weeks locking down 7 different locations,
right? But then you also have to make sure that you have, like, there's a location fee, right, for your environment. So you have to make sure that environment is built and ready to go for those 7 locations, what have you. And it doesn't all have to be in the engine. Like, you can use a still as well if it works for your scene, so.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle, I'd love to really jump to, because your students are doing a lot of in-camera effects using green screen. Am I correct with that?
No, we have a full volume. We have
Are
a
you doing
40
the wall
foot. Yeah, we have a 40-foot wide by 16-foot tall volume with a 16-foot by 16-foot ceiling that we raise and lower.
Wow, like, so if you're gonna go to film school, y'all, forget USC. Go to Full Sail, where Kyle's at. I don't think, does USC even have something like that?
I kind of regret not going to Full Sail now.
We will stop for one moment, because this is a hilarious question from Club Odie. Is this man's name really Chris Cross?
I'm surprised I got this far into this without that coming up, to be honest with you. Yes, my name is Christopher Cross. That's hilarious.
So let's back up a little bit from the volume stages, and let's talk a little bit about in-camera effects using green screen. And one, because obviously this is the easiest thing for indie filmmakers to do. So first and foremost, if they are going to do something like, they want to see the image on their monitor, even though they have a green screen, what programs are they using? Is that something you guys can impart?
I can talk a little bit about that. So it's a little bit of hardware and a little bit of software, because you can't have just one without the other. So you need things like Genlock, a camera that can support Genlock. You need to have a tracking system, which is the big thing that will feed that information into Unreal Engine so that your real world camera moves match the camera moves that are in the game engine. So there's things like the Vive Cam track system that's really great for people that are just starting out, because it's at a very small price point. And for that, plus a Blackmagic camera that supports the Blackmagic Pocket camera, I think has the Genlock in. You get those two things in a Blackmagic card that does Genlock. You're at a very low cost. You're up and running in your space, and then you just route an extra output from your Blackmagic card and your camera to a monitor on camera, and you're pretty much real time compositing and seeing everything using your Genlock camera, your tracker, and Unreal Engine.
It's so exciting. So that said, filmmakers, please start asking questions as they come up, because this is where we're going to get technical, and it's sometimes it's hard to explain a lot of technical stuff without showing. So if you have questions, put them in your comment box.
Jen, I actually have stuff I can show if I can present.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I have some show and tell stuff that we can talk about. But I did want to say, from when we were talking about LED, just all panels are not created the same either. So, when we work on network, we can only work on RAW Black Pearl V2 panels. So I will say, if I know we're talking about indie projects and, but just get on a stage and try it out. But I just wanted to let everyone know that panels are not all equal.
Oh, for sure. It's funny because we were talking about, we were building a spaceship for, our next feature to be a spaceship thing. And these green screen guys were like, just go get some big monitors for the windows. And, that's fine. And I'm like, won't that give me flicker? Like, I don't understand how, but I guess you figure it out along the way. But I've seen the volume stages. I've been on the stages, and filmmakers, I have to tell you, if you haven't actually been on the stages, I can't recommend enough just going to take a tour or something. Just see it in person, because it opens your mind to possibilities that are really kind of hard to come back from. Because now that I've seen it, it's like, do I really have to do green screen now? Like, I don't want to. But yeah, if you want to show us some stuff, and then we'll keep talking. Let me add this to stream.
Yeah, so a project that we're currently working on is called the Go Code. So we are filming in Atlanta at Trilith Studios, which is the former Pinewood. So what you're looking at here is a volume, like a true volume with ceiling. It's full, I guess, what's the shape? Circular. And this is Prism Stage is the name of it. And the world that you're looking at is something we created so Go Code is the greatest of all time. We were filming with all NFL Hall of Famers, and you'll see the world that's loaded here is kind of like this. It's like a lab / Apple type environment. And over to the right, we have like the lab NFL players would enter into, and then we have like a screen that would jump up while we're filming. And then you can kind of see the frustrums going. But again, back to lighting. So this is our crew making sure that we're lighting the scene correctly in the volume. We had John Brinkus is the host of our show. If you're familiar, he did on ESPN Sports Science for over 12 years. And this is one of the NFL Hall of Famers. So you can see right through behind John there is the environment that we created in Unreal Engine. And this was all created custom. Our director, Eric Geisler, our DP, Eric Wolfie. And you can just see some more of the world. But what I want to talk about is not only are we filming on this giant volume in Atlanta, but we are also filming on a tiny little green screen, which you can see here, and matching the worlds. So when you're working with, high level talent, or in our case for this show, NFL players, their schedules are insane, right? So sometimes they can't, in that case, the volume is, 100,000+ a day, but this is at Brinks TV. And sometimes the players can just come to this small studio here. So we have to make what we shot on the volume look exactly the same as shooting on the green screen. And we do that with Stipe Technologies. So, so this coach, we filmed with John on the green screen, and as well here, this was also shot on green screen only. And you can see it very much looks like what we shot in person at the here. So just some photos, that's some of the crew, but yeah, that was just my show and tell for the.
It's very cool. I get so excited by this stuff. I just love it. So as far as like, obviously the LED stages, the biggest thing that I think comes into play is it would be pre-production, making sure you have all your worlds. When you're doing that, like, what are your guys' recommendations for how to best make sure your pre-production is done right? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there's always the joke, fix it in post, right? And now it's fix it in prep.
Fix it in prep.
So, if it's, episodic, or if it's script based, you do your script breakdowns and just figure out, what can we actually film, on LED. So going from there and then figuring out, well, okay, what's your budget for, before you would rent out a location? Well, that location fee can now go towards building and renting, or building your level if it's going to be in the engine, or, to film on the stage that has the LED. So there's just a lot of planning that goes in prep, from your environments, your locations, where are we filming?
I mean, because you also need to come up with your physical sets, as well, to keep it 3D. 3D,
exactly.
4D.
Yeah, no, and that's why we're creating our library, right? And we're going to have, an indie level pricing, similar to what you see on all the libraries. Is like, we understand that students, it would be, I'm sure, Kyle, you would love our library for your students to be able to press a button, load it, and ready to go, So, and a lot of scenes that you need are just like a living room or a kitchen, or, and then you just take your props, put it in, set dress, and you're good to go. So, that's what we're working on, and it's just a lot of money.
So, yeah. Kyle, how do you make sure, like, when you're teaching prep for this, what are you teaching your students?
So we start them quite a bit earlier than they're going to be in the stage. They start almost 6 months before they would come shoot in the stage, working on their script submissions and getting with. We have the benefit here of, we're not just a film school, or we're not just one type of college. We actually have a computer animation program. We have a game art program. We have a game design program. So we have all these other programs that are able to work with each other and kind of start building those relationships now. So we can actually get them started on getting custom environments made, 5-6 months before their shoot time. And they have that lead up time to make sure that everything's looking right. And we bring them into the volume and let them put it up on the wall and see what works, what doesn't. And that's kind of the biggest thing that we push on a lot, whether we're renting the stage out to an outside client or having a student shoot in there, is we always build in prep days, because so many people are new to shooting on the technology that they just don't get it. So built into our budgets or our time with our students, everything has this prep day where you come in and we walk you through each one of the scenes that you want to shoot. Make sure that your camera setups are going to work. Make sure that, your light cards are in the right place, or if you have to move some digital assets, we have time to do that. And doing just that one, extra prep day allows them a lot of freedom and the ability to kind of feel more comfortable once they come in to start shooting. Because what we were finding is, when we were just bringing them in and having them start shooting right away, they were falling behind and they were getting frustrated and they weren't quite sure how to work in the space. But having a no stress day where you get to come in and kind of just play and learn the tech, the next day, most of our people end up getting ahead of schedule, because it's so much easier to quick shoot, do turnarounds and things in this space, that you're really able to move a little bit more fluidly and not have to worry about things slowing you down. So that's kind of the big stuff, is making sure you give yourself plenty of lead time, and making sure you have like a prep day or a day where you can come in and just experiment and make sure things are working how you want them to.
Chris, I imagine
better than we do here. We don't get that. They never give us prep time. So,
well, ask Chris, since you're working on such big productions too, like, Have you found something on day one that you're like, could have fixed it in prep? Do you have any horror stories?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, there's been a couple times when like we know that the image going up there is not what we want. Like we're just like, well, we got to go with it and try to make it work. Like, which is not the way you're supposed to do it. Like everything Kyle said is what I wish we do here. But there's been so many times where we're like, well, we're gonna have to fix that. And like when you say fix it in post, we're the post. We're the ones fixing it. So I've also seen instances where we've just put like previs in the background and we just work off of that until we get what we need to get done. So we know it's going to be not what we want, but it gives us a blocking or a general sense of what we're about to do.
So how do you fix that in post if it's already burned into the camera? You rotoscoping everybody out? Like,
well, what they end up doing, there's been that where we had to roto everything out, which again, this is the wrong way. Like this is wrong, like 100% wrong. But sometimes they just shoot a clean like image and then of what we want, and then without actors in there, and then put actors, and then I've been in situations where they put a green screen up on the LED wall.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
Which I found interesting. I actually had a question. Maybe, I don't know, Kyle or Jess, if you know, like, what's the pros and cons between like a green screen and an LED wall or just a regular green screen? Like, I've always had questions about that.
The big con is that a regular green screen, while it might have some reflective coming off of it, it's not a light bulb, right?
That's what I was thinking.
So if you put a green screen up on the LED wall, like it's just flooding everything with green light, and it makes not only your compositing harder, but then the reflections that we're so excited about with using the LED wall on shiny objects, now all of that has to be hand painted out. So it's kind of a pain to have that. As far as using, like what you're talking about, a lot of places they're using a secondary camera, or they're recording at 48 frames a second, and they're using ghost frames in between the real ones. So if you're not quite sure about your environment, you can actually ghost frame in blue or green screen in between the frames. So you can, all your odd frames are blue screen and all your even frames are the ICFX final pixel. And you can change your mind later.
That hurts my brain. Lucky has a question for you guys on this topic. He says, do you use pre-visualization techniques to build and shoot everything in the computer first, or no? Have you done that?
And when I do my own projects on the screen, I'll take the environment and I'll set up cameras and some of the Unreal Engine mannequins and do my previs storyboarding all inside of Unreal, or if there's an excessive like camera move, do some animatics inside of Unreal, because it's all there. And it's something that I encourage a lot of our film students to get into, whether they're going to be shooting on the stage or not, is because, a lot of filmmaking is headed towards Unreal, but it has everything you could want in there. You can pick your camera, you can pick your focal length, you can pick your sensor size. They have pre-built dollies, pre-built jibs, everything you need to do animatics right there. And it's super fun, but two, it's very helpful to have that when you walk into soundstage and be like, this is exactly what I want. I know I can get it.
That's great. On the note of green screen, I'll sort of finish that whole topic up. First question is green screen, is it dying? Is AI going to remove green screen in the next year? Because I have noticed that there are AI programs that will remove any background, but it's still wonky. You can always see something on that.
Yeah, you still need a human to do the cleanup for sure. Like we still get a ton of work for green screen cleanup from many networks, because yes, there are AI programs that like on screen you can use, but there's still the muckiness. So
well, that's good, because I'm hoping to be buying a green screen studio, and as AI was developing, I'm like, I'm screwed. Secondly, when it comes to using green screen as any filmmaker and doing in-camera visual effects, is there anything different in that prep versus the LED walls, or is it all kind of the same?
So the prep is very, very similar, because you still need the environment done. You still need to know the lighting becomes even more important with the green screen, because you don't have the reflections in the real world to look at. So, if you're shooting a spaceship landing and you want blue lights flickering on your person's head, you need to know that all ahead of time. So you really need to plan out and think a little bit more deeply about how your lights are going to work inside that green screen world to make sure that everything matches up right. But the pre-pro side of things is still very similar. Like everything you used to do in post, you're going to do in pre-production, and you really need to have all of that mapped out well.
What are some of the hardest things about shooting either of these with green screen or LED wall, as far as like, you know, blocking actors, changing angles? Like, are there any tips you guys can give about the actual production? We've talked about lighting is important, and you need to build some kind of sets usually to bring it forward. But like, what are some other things that filmmakers may not be thinking about or not realize about shooting this way?
Your team is so important. Like having people that are knowledgeable about the technology and really understand what they're doing and lighting it correctly and loading, you know, your levels, etc. Like that has to be on. So, you know, a VAD team, virtual art department is, you know, building your environments, your levels. And then you have volume control. So who is the people that are making sure that the volume is working? So volume control. And then, you know, in our cases, we use a technical director, and that's just the person who shit hits the fan, like you're ready to go. Because if you're spending 20, 30, up to $100,000 a day on a stage, you want to make sure that you have the right team in place where if there's a problem that happens, you can get someone on it and not ruin your day.
I notice a lot of the stages that I've talked to, they kind of come with the tech director and often with their own camera people for a price and things like that. So I almost recommend using that stage's team for the jobs that they have because they get it. And then like if you have your own DP, they can work with the camera people that the stage has.
For sure.
If you're director, producer, you come in, but like rely on the technical director. Like there's just people there that are going to make your life easier because they get it. Someone like Jess, you know, she's in this world every day. She gets it. And I'm walking in like, this is pretty. What can we do?
Yeah, and you mentioned the DP. I would recommend working with a DP who has worked on an LED volume, you know, prior. And that's why these conversations are important. Is if you are a DP, try and get yourself onto a wall, like anywhere, even if you could just go to a class or, you know, we here in LA, we host what we call First Fridays, and we kind of travel around and work with different studios to just bring people in and do a demonstration and have cocktails, right? So every first Friday of the month, we have an event somewhere. So even if you've never seen an LED wall, come to one of our events and we'll get you exposed to some of the technology. And Kyle mentioned, you know, Vive is like a low cost solution, but a good solution. We've done demos with them up to, you know, the higher, I think on we use is it OptiTrack on the Trillis, the higher, very high cost. What, Kyle, are they like $5,000 a unit or something? They're very.
The Vive is right around $5,000, and then the OptiTrack and Moses and Red Spy and all those go up exponentially.
Yes. Yeah. I think our Red Spy is around 30,000, you know, so that's what we use here at our studio, is a Stipe system, Red Spy.
So we're kind of nearing the end of this. If anybody's watching and has questions that we haven't answered, please put them in the box. As we kind of wrap, I'd love to talk about sort of where you guys are. Like, what are you currently working on that's exciting? And if you can share any, I don't know what the word is, like lessons learned, things you're implementing now that you wish you would have known before. I don't know if anybody wants to go first. I know, Jess, partly what you're working on is getting funded and getting all those libraries up, which we really want. I guess David has a question popping in. Let's go to his first. As a producer, what costs am I missing when considering moving scenes onto a volume? Could you break down the upfront costs that I'd be saving in posts, artists, composers, etc.? Obviously, it's different. It always varies on project, but if you have like a ballpark idea, maybe you have a project you guys can reference.
I think, you know, if it's VFX heavy, you're saving all those costs if you're doing, you know, if you're working on a volume and it's final pixel, right? So, you know, VFX can run into millions and millions of dollars on a production. So it just really depends what your project is, what your scenes are, and, you know, it's a sliding scale. So I don't know how that is.
I know it's a big question because it really depends on what you're moving in there. And I think that part of it, like with Dave right now, I'm sure it's on his, part of what's on his brain is, you know, we have a spaceship, a space movie, a space kids adventure. So it's like, does it make sense to rent a spaceship set that's pre-built and use some green screen? Does it make more sense to go, or probably more for the planets, like the alien planets you would visit? I always feel like that's where the LED walls shine, right? So it sounds like it's like kind of making decisions on what scenes make the most sense. With that, that's
Yeah, I mean, like
deciding.
sci-fi or fantasy, these are great things to shoot on a volume because you don't have to have that like true, real, photoreal look. So I think it's that's a great, you know, use case for working on a volume. And you know, how are you shooting space otherwise? Is the green screen, right? So, and if you can get your talent, I think as Chris said, if you can get your talent on a volume and they can experience the environment, well, then you're probably going to get a better performance.
I would say great,
Just
for
like,
sure.
oh, I'm hanging in a spacesuit on a green screen, or let's immerse them. Like I showed you pictures, let's immerse them into space, you know, and then that actor can really. And I think a great there's videos of, you know, the Barbie film is kind of exploding right now, and how they were transitioning from the real world to the Barbie world. They shot with Lux Machina as their virtual production company. And you can really see kind of how they broke down and shot those worlds using the volume and kind of the props that they put in front. It's a video on YouTube. I would check it out. And kind of really see, you know, a live use case of a giant movie in our culture right now.
Dave, I'm thinking it seems like the idea would be we just have to do costs. Like, what does it cost us to go shoot this outside, throw a green screen up, composite later? What does it cost us to composite now, go to the green screen? Because I do think the LED wall is going to save anything with those special environments. So, Chris, is there anything you're working on now that's like you're using lessons learned to make it better? I know everybody's kind of in a weird space because there's the strike, and it's like unless you're doing non-union stuff or unscripted or.
Yeah, I'm in post on a project right now. I'm one of the few people I know that's lucky enough to still be working, so I'm very thankful for that. What I can say is right now we are learning from the, you know, as we always do, like learn from the mistakes that happen on set. But you know, when you're on set, what ends up happening is all the departments get crunched for time, right? So it's not necessarily their fault, but they get crunched for time, and then you end up kind of like post ends up kind of fixing what happened because of that time crunch. Well, in our case, like a lot of times we had images up on the wall that, like I said before, weren't exactly what we wanted, weren't correct. A lot of times, I would tell you hands down, lighting was the main thing that has like gotten us. Um, and we've had like vendors be like, we don't like, there's only so much you can do in certain instances, you know? So like, it's like hands down, like prep, making sure you have enough time. Of course, you can only control your schedule as much as you can. And then also sometimes you'll get a director that just, you know, changes what they want. They just do, you know, they're like, oh, I think I want something different in the background. And then now we're sitting here trying to figure out how much it costs to roto an image out, you know, so there's that kind of stuff. But I will say, well, I've learned in the last few projects I've done like probably like 3 full projects with a, you know, LED like screen or something like that in the background. And like the main thing has been lighting and then just knowing ahead of time what we want and hopefully sticking to the plan. It's always when the plan changes is, you know, it's all those gotchas come up. So one of my favorite things I did recently is we shot a scene where we had an explosion going on in the background and we had our actors in the water, but we didn't actually have our actors in the water, but they're supposed to be floating in the water. So we had actors on those like yoga balls. Okay, so they're sitting on the yoga balls and they're kind of like moving around and they're supposed to be in the water and there's supposed to be an image in the background. And it was kind of like, I admit, I was like, this is going to be so stupid. Like I was just like 100% like, this is going to be so dumb. And then they put it together, they had an image in the background and I'm like, it actually doesn't look bad. So I think the big takeaway is like, don't be afraid to like, you know, do something kind of weird and try something out, you know? I just thought it looked stupid at first, but I will admit I was wrong. I was definitely wrong about that. So,
Well,
yeah.
I think anybody, you can even just say, shoot on an LED wall, that's stupid, until you see someone in their car and the reflections on the window and the fan blowing their hair, and you're like, whoa, this is cool. So yeah,
Yeah,
I think it's great.
that's the thing. We had like one scene we shot where we shot with an array camera, like outside reflections and stuff like that for our scene, but we also shot on an LED wall, the background, and we combined everything. And I would say at the end, it was one of the best driving shots I've ever seen for a movie that's like not the best, but the driving shots alone, I was like, wow, this is great. So like the LED wall, like you can get some really good, product out of it, like some really good end results.
That's great. Lucky has a question on that note, shooting different directions. He says, do you ever use a combination of rear projection, LED, front projection, glass plate art? So basically, are you using combos of stuff when you're on an LED stage?
Yeah, I think I showed an example where we're using green screen and the volume and having to meld those worlds and make it work because of talent, booking issues. So yeah, definitely.
That's great.
Yeah, and we're working on getting XR and AR integrated into our system over here, so that we'll be able to have foreground elements that are completely computer generated that the actors can actually interact with, and we can still record in real time. So if you wanted they're in a cave and you want some pillars in front of them, we'll be able to live do that from the same Unreal scene and have it record out to that, so you don't have to worry about adding that other stuff in post. So we're definitely like taking lots of different things and scooping it all together.
I just want to cry. I'm like, I can't believe the stuff that we're gonna get to do. It's amazing. So Kyle, wrapping up for you, what do you feel like is the biggest thing that maybe your students, is there like a consistent problem they run into when they're shooting on LED?
The biggest thing for students or outside clients or really anyone that we have coming into the space is just understanding that, sometimes things are going to go wrong. The system's going to get grumpy and things aren't going to quite work right. And the more prep that you do, the better prepared you are for those things, and really just hammering on them that you really have to have everything locked down in pre-production. Because the more you try and bring the set to change, the more you're going to run into problems, the more that we're going to have trouble shooting things. So just really, the more we can emphasize of how important it is to do the pre-pro ahead of time and to really have everything locked in, the better the end projects end up being.
Great. And just moving forward for you, you have an XR studio, you've traveled to XR studios, you're building this library. What do you feel is your biggest thing that you want filmmakers to know?
Yeah, don't be afraid of it. Like, just jump in. We have jumped in, quite fully, obviously, but even if be a PA on a stage, that just to get yourself immersed into the technology. There's so many resources on, like, I'm a huge LinkedIn person. It's my favorite social media. So if connect with me, I post a lot about virtual production, and there's tons of resources. Check out an app called Lightcraft. It's a company we're working with. The founder and creator of Avid Software is behind funding this project, Lightcraft. And honestly, it's like on your phone, you can put people into a scene and start recording them. So some of our environments are going to go into this app. So, these are easy technologies that you can just right now download on your phone and start working in, quote unquote, virtual production. So I think just jump in. Don't be afraid of it. Talk to people like myself, Chris, Kyle. There's, follow the hashtag virtual production on LinkedIn. Start connecting with people in virtual production, see what they're posting, and don't be afraid of it. Yes, it is cost prohibitive right now, but there are tools like what Stipe is doing and what Lightcraft is doing, et cetera. And we're building a library, right? Like, you don't have to spend $100,000 to build a level when we're going to have these assets available at different price points for students to the studio level. So
that's actually a really good question for everybody to know, which is, how can they follow along that library journey so they know when it's ready? Is it best just to follow you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, follow me on LinkedIn. I also have a series called Production Summit. We actually just had it August 3rd and 4th, where we invited the greatest minds in the world in production to come and speak. So get yourself into that community again on LinkedIn. We had Kimball Thurston from Weta fly in from New Zealand to come speak for us. We had so many amazing people come, and we're going to be releasing those videos and those talks in the coming weeks. So it's such an exciting technology. Is traditional filmmaking going away? No, but the technology is getting better. And obviously there's a ton of discussions about AI and what's going on with real people and digital actors and all of that. But I'm excited, right? Like I'm so excited by what we have as tools to be filmmakers, and dive right in, get those tools that you can get, like I said, right now on your phone, and get into it.
Cool. I'm going to, in the comments, you guys, you'll see LinkedIn's, Jess's LinkedIn link. This here, this video here, I'm linking into the comments from Kyle, is about the stage he has. So definitely check that out. And if you're in, I would even say, like, would you say that, Kyle, renting your LED stage in Florida at Full Sail is less expensive than, say, renting one in LA? Or are you guys pretty similar to?
No, I doubt we're the same prices as LA. We don't have that kind of studio money. But we focus more on the people that we bring into the stage need to help our students and help them, be able to learn the space. So when we cut the ribbon on the space, 3 days after we did our ribbon cutting, we actually shot a feature-length film from beginning to end. Everything was done on the volume, and the big thing for us there was that it was able to be completely staffed by our students. So, the director, producers, DP were all outside people, but our all the below the line positions were filled by students. And we're doing the same thing in January. We're bringing in a low budget sci-fi film where, a majority of it is going to be staffed by students, and it gives them the ability to not only work on a volume and kind of get that experience, but they get to graduate with an IMDb credit on a feature-length film. And that's kind of the stuff we more look for when we're bringing in outside clients, is how is it going to help our student experience?
That's great. And that's for indie filmmakers. You guys pay attention to that. Get in touch with Kyle at Full Sail, because it may make sense to travel there if it's going to be a lot more affordable than shooting here. So that's always something to think about. And then, Chris, do you have anything that, any way you want people to follow you? Anything?
Yeah, you're more than welcome to follow me on LinkedIn. It's funny. I'm starting to try to be more active on there.
It's the best, Chris.
Yeah,
LinkedIn is the best.
It's to the point now where when I'm scrolling on my phone, I'm actually on LinkedIn. That's not Facebook or whatever. I'm like on LinkedIn. So I'm like, okay, it's becoming a thing for me.
Because you feel smart by where, like,
honestly, yes, exactly.
Learn something on a social media, LinkedIn.
Yes, you're right. So I highly recommend that. Also, I'm not in any way affiliated with these organizations, but I just wanted to share a couple of places I've been able to kind of go and experience virtual production. So Real Creative. I've been to their stages before. ROE Creative, I believe they're called. Okay. I went to an event there a while ago, and I think it was partnered with Disguise. So it was Real Creative in Disguise. So I went to an event there, and they have classes that they have. They might be a little pricey, but they do have some classes, and they also do some demos there. So that might be a chance for you to get on some stages there. I also recently went to the Sympathy event in Hollywood, like 2 weeks ago, maybe, or so. I don't know. And that was a fantastic event. And I think they're going to have more of those. And then also, just through the Visual Effects Society, I am a member of the Visual Effects Society, but even before I was a member, I would volunteer all the time, and I would be able to kind of get myself on stages and connect with people in that space. So I highly recommend just kind of like reaching out to those organizations or looking them up to get, any knowledge you can get or, network. So, yeah.
And that's great. Michelle asks, is there any training for PDs in camera effects? These are great. That's a great sort of answers to where you might be able to start to learn more.
Yeah, there's a school called CG Pro. They do a lot of courses on many different things, and you can do them online. And then they have on set days. So CG Pro, Jackie and Ed are the founders of the school. And to Chris's point, Row is the company I mentioned about the panels that are accepted. So they are the people that produce the panels. So they have a lot of resources, obviously, they make it. And I also, Chris, I'm a member of the VES.
Nice.
So they have a lot of events. And then I sent the link to Production Summit, which is what we host, and we cover a lot of, well, we partner with the tech giants, right? Like Microsoft, AMD, NVIDIA, et cetera. They, these are a lot of the companies that are coming out with the tools as we as filmmakers need to make this magic happen, right? So I work a lot with them to make sure that we're not only training the next filmmakers, Kyle, but also having the tool sets in place for them.
Yeah, there's a ton of free tutorials on the Unreal site too, like a plethora of different things that you can learn on there, and it's divided by what you want to learn. So if you want to learn about filmmaking, you can do that. Video games, it's all segmented out, and it's amazing the amount of stuff that they offer for free.
I'm just popping all these into the chat so people can come later and go back and find these. And there's one tech question that we'll answer before we go out, because I know it's asked a lot. Liam asks, what are the pre-RQ tech specs for shooting a plate for a video wall? And I think that's a really important question for any filmmakers who are trying to shoot something that they're going to use later. Do you guys have, is there an easy answer on that?
Not from me. That is too complicated.
Yeah, it's above my pay grade as well. I was going to throw it to you, Kyle.
I mean, we've done it a couple of times, but we really try our best not to. We find that doing things in engine just yield much better results than generic plates. You get much better parallaxing. You get more control over the lighting, over everything, and so we tend to stay away from doing just moving plates or driving plates. We would rather sit down and create a road for the end display to drive down than we would to, just go out and videotape stuff, because we know that we get all of the benefits of the space using it that way.
Interesting. And then also maybe Jess, when your library is ready, you'll have a comment or a suggestion box for locations people want.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to go with the basics, right? Like we're working with Lux Machina, we're working with Monolith, we're talking to View, we're like, those are all like the big stage companies, Pixamundo, et cetera, in Toronto. And we're saying, what are the environments that not only the studios are needing, but any of your customers are needing? And it's basic things. It's like a family room. It's an airport. It's what are these hard to get to places or hard to set up a production, like at an airport, it's impossible. So we're working on those very easy things. Easy, I say lightly, 170 lately, but later. But so that's what we're working on. And we're hoping to have, a number of assets to launch the first of the year. So we just raised our money. We got, the first check in the bank a couple of weeks ago. So we're hitting the ground running and really going after it. And very successful already. I will say we're already getting commissions of the studios coming to us, kind of getting ready for when the strike is over, but of sending our capture team out to go get the content that they need for their, projects, and then we can put it into the library. So there's cost savings there for the studios now. They don't have to spend the $100,000-$300,000 to create these custom environments. We can just do it at cost and then put it in the library, and then potentially we can co-own it with the studios as well. So we have an interesting model that we're creating, and really, these high level models we can offer to students at a lower price point as well. So
that's great. Thank you guys for sharing all this wisdom. You got lots of praise coming from the comments. Lucky says, you guys are killing it. Thanks for all the dope and connections to make. I would love to invite anybody who's watching this in replay or, now, as you have more questions that come up, follow these amazing humans, keep an eye on what they're doing, and definitely get yourselves out to a stage. And if you haven't yet, to see what's going on. I will be doing a lot of this VP on green screen, so we'll see how that goes. And all right, we're out.